Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Anthony D'Esposito. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about where we are right now in the Middle East and the war between Israel and Hamas. The United States has been optimistic now for a couple of weeks that we are closer and closer to a ceasefire deal. However, last week, 6 hostages, including an American citizen, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, were killed in Gaza. And one Israeli official reportedly said that, quote, the hostages being killed changed everything about negotiations. What's your reaction to this news, as well as to the larger issue of the potential ceasefire deal?
So obviously the news of the 6 hostages being killed was terrible, and I think it just reiterates the fact that we're dealing with a terrorist organization, a proxy of Iran, who wants nothing more than to dismantle the state of Israel, kill Jews, and quite frankly, move on to the United States of America if they could. Their hatred for Israel and their hatred for America remains the same. I think it also makes it very clear that much of the administration is gaslighting the American people. We are, I believe, no closer to reaching a ceasefire. Quite frankly, the only ceasefire we should reach is when Hamas surrenders and the last of the hostages are released. That's when there should be a ceasefire. Even, I believe, Prime Minister Netanyahu said either late last night or early this morning that he agreed that they were no closer to a ceasefire. I mean, you have Hamas murdering at point-blank range 6 hostages. That doesn't seem to me that there's people that are operating in good faith.
That's a really interesting point. You think that the administration's gaslighting? National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said earlier this week that he believes a ceasefire in the works is not optimism, it is pragmatism. Why do you think they're gaslighting then?
Because I don't think that they're any closer. I think that when you're dealing with a terrorist organization like Hamas, they are not in, they have no intentions of stopping killing, of stopping raping and pillaging. They have no intention of continuing to cause devastation to Jews, and I think that was very indicative of what we saw earlier this week in the murder of 6 hostages, one of them being an American.
That was really heartbreaking news, obviously, especially the fact that one of the hostages was an American citizen. President Biden said point blank he does not believe Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is doing enough to bring the hostages home. What do you make of his characterization of that, A? And B, do you think Netanyahu's doing enough?
Well, for someone who has spent the last 16 days on a beach in Delaware to criticize anyone of doing the job that they should be doing, I think is quite laughable. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu probably has one of the toughest jobs in the world right now. And obviously, the United States of America should be doing all we can to support the work that Israel is doing. This is not about personal relationships. It's not about how you feel about an individual. This is about making sure that Hamas is eradicated from the planet, that the hostages are released back to their loved ones, and that we can continue on the path that we were in under President Trump and Ambassador Friedman in finding a way to peace in the Middle East.
I want to bring it back to New York City. You and I talked earlier in the spring about protests at Columbia University. School's back in session. Columbia is seeing more protests, including red paint splattered on one of their statues. What's your reaction?
I think, when we talked a few months ago, we said we're going to see more protesters and they will probably be more violent and more individuals as the school year starts. And I think exactly what we spoke about is coming to fruition. I think with the war still waging in the Middle East, with the fact that we are just in about a 60-day mark from the election, I think that we are going to see the protests continue. We're going to see the violence continue. And again, I've said it before, and I will stand by it once again. The Democratic Party are the party of protesters, the people that are causing damage and burning flags in places like New York City and cities and other cities throughout the country are these pro-Palestinian, pro-terrorist groups, people who are standing not only against Israel, but standing against the United States of America.
Vice President Kamala Harris, in a CNN interview last week, said this: "I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, and we have got to get a deal done." A, what do you make of her response there? And B, do you think she needs to speak out against these protesters?
Well, I think that Kamala Harris is doing her best job of speaking out of both sides of her mouth. It's what she's done for her career, and especially when it comes to Israel. Not only should she be calling out these protesters at educational institutions, but in cities throughout the country, she should also call out the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who's the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in the country, who undermined the state of Israel and undermined Bibi Netanyahu right on the floor of the Senate. I mean, I think we've had this conversation where I would compare that speech to a foreign leader getting on the floor of their government the day on September 12th, 2001, and saying that the United States of America should remove President Bush as president. Absolutely ridiculous. They are trying to pander to the far left and the Democrats in their party, places like Michigan and Minnesota, because they're afraid that they won't be able to win this election without the support of these extremists.
You and I talked last spring about the president of Colombia, Shafiq. You called for her resignation back then. She did resign a few weeks ago. There's an interim president now at the university. Do you think there's going to be change? Because there was this change in leadership. Do you think there's going to be tangible, visible change?
Well, we haven't seen it yet. You know, I obviously met with the president of Colombia, myself and Speaker Johnson, and we called for her immediate removal or resignation. It took a little while, but she did leave. I don't see any real tangible changes yet. I have spoken to many of my law enforcement friends and family who are working around the Columbia University area. And I will tell you that Columbia is not being very welcoming or very accepting of law enforcement in the city of New York. So it doesn't seem like the change has been made in the right direction. I guess we will wait to see as these protesters continue. We will see how the interim president handles.
It was a really busy summer, and I felt really lucky to be able to talk to you after the presidential debate earlier in the summer. And you said that after President Biden's performance, you really thought New York was in play. Obviously, a lot has changed in the election over the past 2 months. Vice President Kamala Harris is now at the top of the ticket. Do you still think that because of this giant shakeup that New York is in play?
I think it's tough to tell right now. I think that Kamala Harris is on a little bit of a honeymoon. We're going to see her come off, obviously, the convention as being a new candidate, and we'll see how the debate plays out this coming week. But listen, I think that New York is going to be razor tight. I believe that all of the Biden districts that are now held by Republicans, we're going to see victories again. I think we have real opportunities to flip some seats from blue to red. So the numbers are going to be historically better in New York than they've been. Obviously, in a place like my district, Joe Biden won my seat in 2020 by 16.5 points. And every poll that we've done thus far, starting in the beginning, or actually before the beginning of the summer, up until just 2 weeks ago, President Trump is ahead. I am ahead by nearly double digits. So we are confident that in places that, like I said, where Democrats have historically done well, the failures at the top of their ticket, the fact that Kamala Harris is the same person that Joe Biden is. She comes from the same administration which made the same disastrous mistakes, whether it's our economy, whether it's our border, whether it's foreign policy. Kamala Harris is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is Kamala Harris. And when you're running on your record, she really doesn't have much to run on.
That's a really interesting point, going back to your district, because you're obviously a Republican. Joe Biden won your district pretty handily in 2020. So what are constituents on the ground saying? Why this split from, I mean, you're a Republican representing a district that Biden won.
So I think that people here are focused on, the things that families talk about around the dinner table, the cost of living, the fact that they're concerned about the southern border, and not because they live near the southern border, but because we've been saying it for months that every state is now a border state, every city a border city. And remember, many of my constituents, many of my neighbors travel in and out of New York City every single day, whether it's to be educated, whether it's to work as an NYPD cop or a FDNY fireman, whether it's to work on Wall Street. They see the disastrous effects of this migrant invasion and the crime that it's caused in New York City. And they're concerned. The fact that many schools, and I was just having this conversation within the last hour, many schools in my district and throughout Long Island and New York have seen, especially last school year, and I'm sure they'll see it this year, they saw an uptick in students entering the school system mid-year. Those who are utilizing English as a second language, those who need more resources, and local school boards are finding it very difficult to find the funding in a very tight budget to be able to afford to now provide resources to an extra 4, 5, 6, 7 or more kids who, again, English is their second language, and it's taking away from the students whose families pay a pretty penny here on Long Island for their school taxes. So whether it's crime, whether it's the migrants coming into our communities and taking away resources, whether it's the fact that, in a district like mine, you have the largest Jewish population of any congressional district, and the way that Democrats have handled this war in Israel is quite frankly disgusting. And it's not all of them, but a large portion of the Democratic Party and those who are wreaking havoc in our cities with protests. Those are people of the Democrat Party. You have members of Congress who have outright called for the destruction of Israel. This is what people are focused on. They're focused on their pocketbook. They're focused on staying safe, and they're focused on someone who represents them that's accessible. And I've shown that I am accessible. I'm in every community that I represent as much as I can. You can follow my social media feed. I don't stop from the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I lay my head on my pillow. I am making sure I am engaging in the communities that I represent, and we've done a good job in our freshman term in Congress, bringing close to $30 million in community projects back to this district. And whether that was for our libraries, for law enforcement, for first responders, for infrastructure projects, that's what people want to see. They want to see people who have the ability to put all the rhetoric aside and don't engage in the partisan nonsense and actually just roll up their sleeves and get to work. And that's exactly what I've been doing from the moment I became elected official back in February of 2016 to today. I put the partisan nonsense aside, and I work for the people that sent me there. And again, in a district like mine, where Democrats outnumber Republicans by 70,000, I don't win, and I didn't win in 2022 just because I'm supported by conservative Republicans. I win because independents and Democrats trust that I am the person that's going to represent them and their family. I am the person that's going to fight to keep them safe. I am the person who's going to fight for those that are from the Jewish faith. I'm the one that's going to fight anti-Semitism. I'm the one that's going to bring funding back to our communities. I am the one that's going to be accessible and help small business and keep our communities safe. And unfortunately, that is everything that the Democrats are not focused on. My opponent, she's not focused on the things that matter most to the people in this district. She's focused on what the party, the Democratic National Committee, is telling her to be focused on. And that's why she will lose for the third time.
If you are the candidate that can bring both parties together, are you concerned that the top of the ticket could potentially bring that down? Because Donald Trump is a divisive figure in politics.
So I think that to that point, I think that right now what the focus needs to be is the issues. And I've had this conversation, and we've had conversations like this amongst groups. And the President Trump came to visit the Republican conference just before we went out of session. And one of those conversations that was had by us was that we need to stick to the issues that matter most to the American people. And I will leave those issues up to the respective representatives from those areas. But right here in the 4th Congressional District on Long Island in New York, I know exactly what my neighbors are concerned about. What are the things they are talking about at the dinner table or the breakfast table? And those are what we need to focus on. Again, this is not about whether you like Kamala Harris as a person or whether you like Donald Trump as a person. This is about being on the right side of the issues. And Republicans are on the right side of the issues that matter most. Republicans are on the side of the issues that matter to this country.
Congressman, per usual, I really appreciate your time today. We're about 60 days from Election Day. I hope you can join me closer to November 5th. But until then, thanks for the time.
Would love to. Be well.